Good morning, afternoon, everybody. How are you guys doing today? I am excited to get started and show you all the differences here between QuickBooks Online Advanced, QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise, and Acumatica. And it never fails. There's somebody outside my window cutting grass, so hopefully that'll finish in just a minute. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. First of all, if I can get a hand raise, a question, how are you guys doing? Let me know you can hear me okay. Everything is sounding good. Say hi. Let's see. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, perfect. Yay. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Sometimes you just, this week we had a go to meeting changeover view, and you just always want to check to be sure. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So just as a reminder, so this is Marjorie Adams. I'm the CEO of Fourlane. Today I just wanted to remind everyone about what makes Fourlane unique here. So we've been the #1 QuickBooks solution provider since 2010. We mostly have focused on enterprise from day one. So we have a lot of enterprise clients. And that also means we have a lot of clients transitioning to ERP. We have a lot of clients transitioning from ERP, so we see a lot of movement both ways. One of the very few firms out there that really represents QuickBooks heavily and an ERP product. We represent Acumatica, which is what we're going to be looking at today. Another thing that is important is that we are experts in accounting, so we can talk debits and credits. We can explain what's happening behind the scenes in the system when, you know, the system is just taking care of things for you, or what to expect in the GL when you post something. So we understand the accounting side. We understand the business side of how to look at financials, what numbers we should be looking at, and then of course we understand the systems and how they should be set up. So I did not realize that that was a unique thing until we really heavily got into the ERP space, but a lot of, you know, our first launch into Acumatica, our first go live, we actually still assist with doing the books with that client. So we really wanted to know the accounting side as well. And then we're of course project managers for change management. Our formula for success, so we do a lot of different services over here. Processes, documentation, and training, that's probably the #1 next to product conversion. Custom reports and programming, financial reporting review, ERP readiness consulting. Not everybody is ready to make that jump quite yet. We have to have our processes down pretty well. And then of course, software management for when we're making changes. Okay, let's go ahead and get in products, the fun part of all of this. I'm going to start things out. In all the pop-ups, all the things, in QuickBooks Online. I view QuickBooks Online as to be the most simple point of entry when it comes to vendor management. So when you're in QuickBooks Online, you can go over to the expenses tab here, right? And then you have expenses and vendors. So you would be clicking on vendors, and it takes you to your vendor list, and then you can import or we can add vendors manually. What I really want to focus on today is I want to focus on the fields that are available, right? When you start to get into more complicated products, those products can complicate things, and mostly that's because we have more fields available. We have more information we can put in the system, and that more information hopefully will allow us to report better and get us, you know, better access to data so we can make business decisions. So in QuickBooks Online here, right, we have title, first name, middle name, last name, suffix. All of these fields are available in all of these systems, and I just wonder how much people actually use them. But it's just one name here, okay? You have the company name, you have display as name, right? So maybe you call them Fourlane, but on their checks, you want them to be printed on, you say use display name as print on checks, you want it to be called Fourlane Inc., okay? or we have Fourlane's we have a corporate name. Maybe you need to put the corporate name in there. You put in there the address, any notes tied to the vendor. You can add attachments, maximum size 20 megabytes. Okay, drag and drop files into this little section here. We can add some custom fields on the vendor list here. That is new in QuickBooks Online Advanced, having more custom field availability. Emails, phone number, mobile, fax, websites, billing rate per hour, right? So if we have a subcontractor, I guess as an individual, what would be their billing rate per hour? Any terms that we have with them, you have a place to put the opening balance in. Of course, we never recommend doing this because it will make a transaction in your file that is not easy to work with. You can put the vendor account number in there, or your account number with the vendor, right? Their business ID, so for tax 1099 tracking, and then if they have a default expense account, you can put that in here. Okay, so pretty basic. When we get into QuickBooks Enterprise, so when I come in here to the vendor center, okay, so of course I have my list of vendors, and then I can double click to edit a vendor, or I could create one from scratch. So we have the vendor name, company name, first, last, etc. We have the title. That could be helpful, right? Knowing who you're talking to when, are you talking to the purchasing agent, etc. So you have a whole bunch of different contacts, ways to contact. You can contact them through Twitter if you choose to, Skype. Again, I've never seen people utilize all of these things, but there are a lot of options. Address details, we have billed from and shipped from, so we can have 2 different addresses in there. Payment settings, right? So you have your account number, terms, print name on check, same as we had before. You have credit limit, so what's our credit limit with them? And then billing rate level. Okay, so basically what this allows you to do is have different bill rates, right? So maybe this person bills out $100 an hour versus somebody else who bills out at $200 an hour for the same task. Okay, so maybe the subcontractor has some kind of certification that we can bill them out at a higher rate, whereas another subcontractor maybe does not. Tax settings, so vendor tax ID, we can track for 1099s through here. Account settings, so you can put 3 default accounts. Additional information, so we do have vendor type, so they have some defaults in here. This is a field. I always tell people when you're looking at any of the fields in QuickBooks, right? You want to go down and see custom transaction summary or detail report and see if you can total by that field. That makes it so that in product, you can use that field to figure some stuff out. So you can do that in product with vendor type. And then of course, we have custom fields as well that you can set up here on the vendors, okay? One other thing that you can have in QuickBooks Enterprise is you can have multiple contacts, right, tied to, we can tie to-dos to this vendor. The to-dos can't be tied to a user, but they can be tied to the vendor. We do have notes, so you can have multiple notes and a pinned note. Any sent emails would be kept here. And then in Enterprise, new in 2020 is that we can have the vendor's price list, right? So what the price is for our items for 401k administrator versus accounting firm. So we can upload those, right? Name, that would be the item name, the description, unit of measure that they used, the last price we paid, the last quantity that we bought from them, the last time we ordered this item from them, the price they gave us. Lead time can be used in here. It is informational only. The vendor part number, notes on the items, you can put additional information in there, maybe quantity discount information because they don't really have that on the purchasing side here. And then the last time we imported the vendor's price list. Okay. So this is, again, something that's new in 2020 in QuickBooks Enterprise, but it gives us a lot more information when it comes to having vendors in the system. Okay. Anybody have any questions around that? Last time when I went through customers, it took so long, so I'm like whipping through this time. If you guys didn't see it, we did a customer webinar last month and then also a entering sales orders webinar last month as well. Okay, so let's go on into Acumatica. All right, so when you're in Acumatica, there's a lot of different views, but the most recent view, right, is using these icons down the side here, all of our different modules. So similar to QuickBooks, you have multiple ways that you can get to the same place. So I can go into vendor management, right, and see all the things that would potentially have to do with vendors. And I can go to my vendor profiles, which is your vendor list, right? Then I can also go to purchases here, which are going to have kind of similar, but a little bit less options there. So there's multiple places, just as you're used to seeing in QuickBooks. Under vendor management, I do like to show this. So I'm going to go in and show you how to set up a vendor, but some of the other profiles, right, other lists that would tie to the vendor, vendor locations, so if they have multiple locations, vendor prices, so similar thing. And then vendor discounts, right, as well. Okay, let me go into vendors here, and I am going to pick a particular vendor to take a look at. So up top, one of the things that I love about Acumatica and making the transition easier when you move from QuickBooks into Acumatica is that there is consistency across the different screens. So if I'm looking at the vendor screen, I'm looking at the customer screen, the item screen, it's going to feel and look very similar on all the screens. On top, I can have notes tied to this vendor. I can have files attached to this vendor. I can have notifications that I set up tied to this vendor. So these could be if-then statements. If contact changes, notify whoever's in charge of this vendor that the contact changed, right? So they can reach out and introduce themselves to the new contact over there, whatever it is. And then, of course, I have customization because I'm in as the admin. We have our vendor name or vendor ID. We have different statuses. So you can have more than just active and inactive. We can have on hold, hold payments, one time. It has some balance information up top and any prepayments, balances. It does track prepayments accurately through here. General information, so you can see, right, company name, information. We have email addresses at the main contact. We have a main address for us down here. So there's lots of different places basically where you can have contact information. If they have a parent account, so in QuickBooks, we're used to seeing customers and jobs, right? We don't really have that structure built in on vendors though. And so in here, we can have parent accounts tied to vendors. So times when I've maybe seen that is, you know, people have different, so it's the same vendor, but they pay different locations individually versus paying the corporate office. So I've seen that before. Okay, so again, main address down below, vendor defaults. So we have defaults that we can have down here as well. Cost code, right? So it's not something that you see in QuickBooks. Sometimes people use class for that, but this is a separate field. And then account group or items that we're going to be using as defaults. You can have a vendor class specific. Now, again, this is separate from QuickBooks. Class field is like global across everything, right? Items, chart of accounts, customers, sales. So vendor class is specific to just vendors, right? So you can run reports and total by vendor class. Like there's going to be a customer class field in Acumatica, item class, vendor class. So just more fields, right? More ways that we can splice our data to get accurate, you know, more details when we need to make decisions. What terms we're using, currency, what currency they use, right? Currency rate type, so we can have different currency rate types when you're using multiple currency. Is this a landed cost vendor? Is the vendor a tax agency, right? the comptroller, and then are we 1099? Is it going to be a 1099 vendor? And then some more 1099 information. So keeping track if it's a foreign entity, just more information. Personal data privacy. So have they consented to processing of personal data? Okay, date of consent and when consent expires. So there are some compliance things that we can track in the system. Payment settings, so again, more information, right? Remittance address, remittance contact, so we have a different contact for who we're supposed to pay. It's not all just lumped into one area there. Some default payment settings, okay, how much lead time we need on payments, and if we want to be paying them separately, right, like each invoice separately, and then any kind of special payment instructions. Purchase settings, so we can see in here, oh, isn't a demo, right? What's happening? Can you guys still hear me? Can I get a thumbs up? Ah, there we go. Okay. I don't know what happened. It just decided to take a break for a second. We have this hosted, by the way. This is not hosted. One of the things about Acumatica is that you can choose to have it hosted in the cloud, right, on AWS servers with them. That's the SaaS version. We have it hosted on a private server through a hosting partner. And then, of course, you could bring the entire file local if you wanted to. So purchase settings, right? So what's the shipping information that we're going to be using over here? Okay, shipper's address, so that can be different. Any kind of default location settings, okay, what tax zones they're in, shipping instructions that we want to give to them, right? Which warehouses, shipping terms, ship via, how many what's the lead time? This is actually functional, this lead time. Can tell us on purchasing how far in advance we need to be asking for product to be shipped. Do we want to allow the bill to be entered before the receipt of items? You can prevent that. A minimum receipt, and you can do it percentage, right? So saying like, do not receive it in if it's less than 50% fulfilled type thing. And max receipt, threshold receipt, and then receipt action, right? So accept but warn, accept or reject. What would we be doing if these would be triggering us to stop doing something? Okay. Now, I know that there are a lot of things that we're looking at in the system too. I always tell our customers that are going into Acumatica, you know, it's nice to know it's there. You don't need to use all of these things from day one, right? Baby steps, baby step it up. Locations, so you can have all the different locations for your vendors set up in here. Contacts, so you can have multiple contacts as well. These contacts are functional, meaning that I can send, when I look at mail settings, emails to these different contacts. Okay, they're not just informational only like in QuickBooks. Attributes, so we can have different attributes that we have defined. These are similar to custom fields, right? So I can set up as many different attributes and I can make them required. Any activities tied to this particular vendor. So this is where we can add, you know, tasks, right? So similar to QuickBooks, how I could add a to-do, but these to-dos would be tied to users so that when they log in and they look at their home screen or they go into their tasks area, it would have a task for them to do to reach out to this vendor and talk to them about renegotiating our contract or whatever it is. Okay. And then we can keep track of it in the system here as well. And it does not just tasks, but also events, right? Meaning meetings. Default GL accounts. You can see you can get pretty elaborate with the GL account defaults here. So which AP account are we going to be using? You can have sub accounts, which expense accounts would be the default. Again, sub accounts, discount accounts, cash discounts, okay? Prepayment accounts, you can track prepayments accurately through here. PO accrual accounts, right? Receive not invoice type of things. And then reclassification account. So if, you know, we go in and need to move things around in the GL, where's it going to go? Where's it going to head? Mail settings. So we can have things set up in the system, right? So notify them using this particular template when we send purchase orders out to this vendor, right? Or use this report when we send purchase order information out, or RFQ information, or whatever it is that we're sending out. So you can have different templates tied to the vendor based on what you want them to see. And then of course we talked a little bit about compliance. So compliance can be something in, like, maybe in subcontractors. In QuickBooks, if you're in the contractor edition, you can add in there, when you set up a vendor, you can add in the workers' comp expiration and general liability insurance expiration dates. It doesn't really trigger you though, right? It's just kind of information only. Compliance here, if you add it in, you can add in whatever kind of dates you want, right? So you can have all sorts of different tracking, because you can just add them. It's not limited in the amount of fields. But what will happen is if you go in and try to create a purchase order to this vendor and there's something in compliance that is either an expired document or something that we need to receive from them ahead of time, then it will trigger you. It'll flag you. You can even prevent people from moving forward because this vendor is not in compliance with what we're needing. Okay. All right, let me just see before I show on the vendor prices. Any questions here? So somebody said, are you going to compare it to QuickBooks Desktop, not necessarily Enterprise? So the only thing that I showed that was specific to Enterprise today was the items, having the multiple price list for items. Everything else that we looked at is available in QuickBooks Pro and Premier Desktop. I guess the only other thing really would be the custom fields, right? In Pro and Premier Desktop, you can't have as many custom fields and you can't have custom field drop downs. But besides that, everything else is available in Pro and Premier. Any other questions before I go ahead and move on? All right, perfect. Okay, so looking at the price lists in here, so we can have all of the different price lists, right? So when you have a particular vendor, let me make this a little bit wider. So we have a particular vendor, and then the account, right? The item that we would be purchasing from them, and then what their pricing is. Of course, we could import information here from Excel. So when the vendor sends us over the information, we can import it from Excel. In QuickBooks, you're doing a copy and paste in the paste from Excel field. If I go into paste from Excel, I have the ability to paste in vendor items, right? So it'd be a similar thing to this. When we import information in here, you're just, again, going to have more fields, right? So we have the ability to import to warehouses, like what are their quantity in different warehouses is a promotional thing. The quantity, the price break quantity, right? So when we would be getting a higher price break, the effective date, if there's an expiration, you can have different currencies. So lots more fields available. And of course, they have an alternate ID as well. So you can decide which fields you want to see. Let's see, say we don't use multi-currency, so you can just take that field away. And then vendor inventory. So we do have the ability to see quantity on hand and track quantity on hand, right? Tied to our different vendors if we wanted to. That's a lot to maintain. A lot to maintain, to update, but we do have people who like go and check on, you know, how much availability is out there. Okay, that is really all I had to show today when it comes to vendor setup. and what is available when it comes to vendors in Acumatica versus QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Enterprise, or QuickBooks Enterprise and QuickBooks Online. Vendors, of course, are a lot more simple, so we don't have as much that's going to be happening around them. But next week, I believe it's next week, we're going to go into how to create a purchase order in QuickBooks Online versus QuickBooks Enterprise or QuickBooks Desktop versus Acumatica, and there's going to be a lot more around that because of, you have in Acumatica, just as a little preview here, you have requests, requisitions, and purchase orders. So a three-step process that, of course, in QuickBooks, we just have purchase orders. So if anybody has any more questions, definitely reach out, and I will hang out here for a minute. Let me see, we have some. Will this video be available for replay? Yes, on Fourlane.com, we have events, and in the event section, we have previous webinars, and underneath the previous webinars, you'll see all the what's new in QuickBooks webinars, and you'll see all of our Acumatica versus QuickBooks webinars that we've done up there. Oh, they're both the same questions. Okay. Anything more? Sure thing. All right, well, I will just hang out for about 2 more minutes if anybody has anything further they want to see. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great and safe day. Be safe out there, and let us know if you have any additional questions.